Finally, Congress stopped fighting, along with the president, over the fiscal U.S. policy, and they signed the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2023, raising the debt ceiling. So Congress now and the government can go and borrow more money, and now they turn their attention on other issues. We want to update you on the status of the immigration reform today. I'm Sam Shihab with the law firm of Sam Shihab and Associates, and with me,
I'm Brian Burke, conveniently also from the law firm of Sam Shihab and Associates. Very convenient. We're going to have some fun talk about, and realistic talk, I think, about immigration reform in the United States. And as always, take some questions.
When we come back. All right, folks. So back to discussing the immigration reform laws, and a couple bills were introduced recently.
Headline makers for sure, right? Yeah.
Well, Congress is talking, and that's a good start because Congress stopped talking about immigration reform for quite some time. Since January of this year, the debt ceiling was reached, and the government was not able to borrow any money, and therefore there was a sort of a crisis in the government, and the Republicans wanted certain things done. Some of it is logical and sensible. Some of it is crazy. Likewise, the Democrats wanted to spend everything under the sun, and the Republicans said, you know, not on my watch, and they went into this 6 months of doing nothing except talking about the debt ceiling, whether to be raised or not raised, and so forth. We all knew it was going to happen at the last hour. I mean, it always have to happen in the last hour. I mean, if you want to teach your kid not to procrastinate, I mean, you're not going to teach
Where
him
did
through
you learn to
Congress.
procrastinate this? I learned it from Congress. Yeah.
The last minute. I mean, come on. You're going to pass it. You're not going to default. We all know that. It's silly. Everybody's running in Congress and everybody taking things serious. It's a Mickey Mouse show.
Well, the worst part is that every time there's like a government shutdown that's going to come, we have to sit here around the office and go, how do we account for this government shutdown? How do we make sure our immigration cases can get filed? It has real impacts, I guess. You know, poor immigration attorneys, but it does have real impacts out there in the world of their finger twiddling.
Two bills passed, introduced recently, and in both of them, they contain employment-based provisions, among others.
Yeah.
One introduced by a Democrat, the other one was bipartisan.
Yeah. So there is out there right now, the ones that have made headlines recently, there is the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2023, which, if it sounds familiar, you may remember the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021. And essentially, it was President Biden's immigration agenda. And this, it's Linda Sanchez has introduced, the latest revamped version of it. That's that, introduced by her. Also out there, though, is the Dignity Act of 2023. And
she, on her website, she threw in few facts that I think are interesting.
Let's get out some basics first, sure, yeah.
So she threw in some facts about immigration in America.
Yeah.
Sometimes, we all know it, but sometimes when there's numbers, it helps.
Yeah.
So she puts in that 17% of the workforce are foreign-born in this country right now.
Tell that to the average person, I don't think they believe you.
Yeah, 1 in 5.
Yeah.
Almost 1 in 5. 4.4% of which are undocumented, illegal. 5 million undocumented workers are serving what we call essential role at the front line right now. 5 million. That's ridiculous. The one that really blew me away is that 1 in every 5 entrepreneurs in the U.S. are foreign-born.
I believe it.
Foreign-born business owners employ 8 million Americans and generate $1.3 trillion for our economy. And I will add my piece of it. they're doing the best they can to raise interest rate recently to increase unemployment because the economy is so hot they cannot find workers.
Yeah.
And they cannot reverse that. So it's time for Congress to maybe do something. So back to the act.
Well, yes. Let's talk about a little bit about what the act does. So it basically has something for everybody in it. It has, some, your border security, sort of, stop that, fix that situation, stuff there. It has, I can go into the details a little bit later. It has, path to citizenship for undocumented, and notably relevant to people who are most likely in our audience. There's some stuff that impacts employment-based immigration as well. There's automatic work authorization for H-4 visa holders. Prevents basically change the age out provisions, which it seems per our reading should be preventing the 21-year age out for derivative green card applicants. Gets rid of the numerical limitation on certain cap visas like H-1Bs for those who have STEM degrees from the United States. So kind of what it sounds like it would expand the master's cap. And big one for those who are waiting for a green card, eliminates per country visa limitations. So huge.
Well, so that's huge, but also the H-1B, if they go into a situation where, say, if you got a master's degree from the U.S., you're exempt.
Yeah.
If they say something,
Or
if you have a
it's doctoral degree, but
or
yeah,
PhD.
sorry, yeah.
I mean, here's a piece of information: 74% of engineering students in the graduate programs in the United States are foreign-born.
You were once one of those, weren't you, Sam?
Well, I was not in a master's program.
Oh yeah,
I got a bachelor's, yeah. And in IT, over 70% in the graduate program are foreign-born.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and these are masters. Of course, if they allow PhDs to be exempt, these PhD programs are going to be so hard to get. It'll be incredible.
Yeah.
So yes, and also I think in her proposal, she wants to reach out and recapture some of the unused green cards from prior years to reduce the backlog.
Yeah, there's a part in that for family-based immigration, for sure. Going back to the year 1990 when the last major immigration reform changed, and going back and getting all those unused family visas. Yeah. So that's generally about the Citizenship Act. Introduced sort of the democratic crown jewel introduced by this in the House by Linda Sanchez. And then there's the Dignity Act, and this one I think this one may have been introduced or brought up sometime in the last week. And it caught my eye because it has bipartisan support, and bipartisan means there's two parties in the United States. It means support from both of them, and I have a brief list of the people who are supporting this, and these are names I haven't usually heard in relating to past immigration reform bills, but introduced by Maria Salazar with support from Veronica Escobar. Those first two were, let me be clear, Maria Salazar, Republican, Veronica Escobar, Democrat, Lori Chavez de Remer, Republican Oregon, Mike Lawler, Republican out of New York, and Jennifer Gonzalez Colon, Republican out of Puerto Rico. Bipartisan, basically, it's only one Democrat there on the list. I'm sorry, two Democrats with, one Democrat with a bunch of Republicans there. So, bipartisan support, and, for me, that's what you need to get anything done, because we spent a lot of time talking here in the fall of 2021, conveniently around the last time the U.S. Citizenship Act was brought up, and they came really close to some immigration reforms, and they couldn't do it based upon just the Democrats alone. You may remember the names of Kyrsten Sinema and, what's that gentleman's name out of West Virginia, who's... I can't remember his name, but they have a senator out of West Virginia who basically they got together and sunk so much of what President Biden wanted to accomplish. What do you get in this Dignity Act?
A lot there. Some of the normal cocktail of solutions.
Yeah.
So there's no, I mean, the solutions are the solution. Republicans or Democrats, they're the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to protect the border.
That's what they're
And,
yeah, Republicans
and they're
want-
putting money on protecting the border. Okay, and then they turn around and they're going to say, again, this bill also wants to talk about grabbing some of the old unused green cards and reusing them to reduce the backlog. It creates, I think, a 10-year maximum limit on waiting
Yeah.
for the green card process, and after which you will get your green card.
Yeah, so it raises the per country limitations from the 7% to 15% and does create a maximum 10-year limitation. Yeah.
But does not, and obviously the devil is in the details. These are just all basic stuff. So how are you increasing the number of green cards for employment base from 140,000 to a different number? If you're just saying up to 10 years you get your green card.
I suppose you
have to.
have to be, yeah. And the other thing on the list is work authorization for H-4 spouses with no need for an I-140 approval. Now, different bills from different places, and I just happened to pull up the full text of I think it was the Citizenship Act of 2023. It's like something like 400 pages, and Dignity Act is something big as well. I guess I got to say, Sam, is these bills, they seem a lot alike. Do they not?
Yeah, the change. I mean, there are differences.
Yeah.
But it's the same because it's the same problem. It's the same country, and the problems are obvious.
Well, yes. And these bills sound a lot like the ones we would have talked about in fall of 2021 when there was the last big push. So I guess maybe we talk about some of the broader issues, Sam. Do we anticipate another big push coming for immigration reform? Because there's a lot of bills circulating in end of 2021 and pressure from the White House. And this, do we foresee one coming?
No.
How
close are we to the election right now?
Oh boy! So I think we have about a year, right? 2020. Yeah, 2024 is when the next election.
Nothing is going to happen before the election.
I imagine the headline. President Biden achieves breathtaking immigration reform, or choose your describer of choice. And I imagine every other person on the other side of the aisle going, no, we can't have that. Have that.
Not before the election.
Not in an election year.
Yeah. So wonderful discussion, wonderful ideas. Chances for them passing, we are skeptical.
Yeah.
Watch out for a Biden victory.
He has been able to pull some things off that, you're speaking in the presidential election.
And it all depends on what happened to the House and the Senate.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. That's why, I was really optimistic in late 2021, and everything fell apart because the votes weren't there. And I guess the fundamental question is, what do you need to get one of these things passed is you need the votes.
The senator that you're trying to remember, his name is Manchin.
Manchin, Chuck Manchin, Charles Manchin, no?
Something like that.
Yeah,
he's trying to run. He's going to run for president. Word is
everybody's running for president
as an independent.
If he's running as an independent, I would be if I were President Biden, I'd be
concerned.
I'd be concerned. I mean, generally speaking, when somebody from your party goes independent, they are a spoiler. It's the Ross Perot of 1992 or whatever it was ruined it for George H.W. Bush. That is the existential threat to anybody running.
Right. So we may have Trump again if Manchin runs again. That would be a person that I would hate for the rest of my life if he runs as independent and get us Trump again.
Yeah.
Because that would be, and not talking about politics too much, but
I don't think
he's not immigration friendly, and he's not. But he's the kind of guy that can surprise you too.
I don't think he's immigration. I mean, the bottom line for me is the results we got out of of the Donald Trump presidency. It was brutal for people on H-1B visas. He did an extraordinarily poor job of. His administration really extraordinarily poor job of doing it the right way, such that a lot of what he
financial ability requirement that were outrageous.
Yeah, a lot of the
just creating things a complete obstacle to people getting green cards.
Yeah, I mean, he set out and saying, "I'm going to go after immigration," and he did, you know. And I mean, I think of the Republican alternatives. You know, you got Ron DeSantis is the other one out there, and he ain't exactly immigration friendly either.
And he's not business friendly. It doesn't look like.
Yeah,
with his fight with Disney.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we need a centrist. We need somebody. In the center.
people will. I mean, people have rightfully people who are in an illegal immigration line. I've talked to a lot of them. You do too as well. They get frustrated with the Democrats' plans to, you know, create paths to citizenship for people who've come here illegally. But it's when I'm forced to choose. I'm an immigration attorney. I think that immigration laws should be generally be abided with. When I'm forced to choose between one option or the other, I'm going to go for the more pro-immigration option for everybody.
We've had great Republican presidents with great pro-immigration agenda that made wonderful advancement, and we've had some Democrats that were not as great. So it's not really the politics; it's really the person.
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah. I mean,
Obama. I think at the end of his
he's the one who was on my tongue. Yeah.
On the end of his term, he introduces great reforms and the new regulations, create a lot of flexibility in the law. But on his way out, it took him 2 presidencies to really do anything.
Yeah.
And he really didn't change anything. He just made it tougher. I mean, he enforced the law in a very aggressive way, but he was not anti-immigration. But he was not helpful either.
Yeah, but I mean, he was it's something that irritated his party. You know, his aggressive immigration enforcement
But he created DACA.
Yeah, which is perpetually holding on by a thread. You know.
Well, you know, U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of it that you cannot undo it now.
Yeah.
So it kind of survived. So digressing here a little bit from our discussion, but a good talk about what's coming in the reform. So you and I agree, Brian, that this year it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Or skeptical.
Yes, I don't think it's going to happen as soon as I don't think anybody. The bottom line is you flip the parties, you know, because the point is we've seen these bills from Republicans and Democrats, some version of this, and they've been coming along every now and again for the last couple years, and nothing happens. People get excited about them, and guys like us come along and say it's not going to happen. Why? And I don't know if I have an answer to this one, Sam. Why do they do this? Why does this not seem like a colossal waste of time right now?
Do you have 3 hours? Because it takes a long time to answer the question. But the short answer is we honestly have a disconnected Congress. I mean, Congress. You got to start reforming Congress for them to reform immigration. Congress needs reform, and that's a big question. You know, these appointed for life almost people. I know they run for election every 4 or 6 years, but they are not enough to unseat them when you're an incumbent. You know, it's very difficult to unseat them. There's some people over there that are just completely uninterested in moving the country in the right direction.
Yeah.
And they're and they're getting rich. You know, most. You know, I was having a discussion with my partner about Congress. Most Congress members are millionaires, and they made their money. Their net worth somewhere between $10 million to $500 million, depending on who you're talking about. And all the money is made. Their salary, $250,000 salary, individuals, or $200,000, you know, decent salary, but it doesn't make you a millionaire. The only way you make that money is being in a position of power where you have access to deals and opportunities normal human beings don't have. And that's how you become a millionaire. You know, they come in very poor, and then after 15, 20 years, all of a sudden they walk out with a net worth of $50 million. So it's a situation where it is a system, I don't have any other word to describe it except corrupt. I'm sorry.
I mean, when I think about, some nice member of, the legislative team of these Congress people have written this law, and I just think of, it just seems like a colossal waste of time, because these are laws I just don't see.
And there's a lot of people that watch us and listen, and they read this and they say, here it comes. And they don't know this is all garbage. I mean, I'm sorry, but the Dignity Act, what Dignity Act? The Citizenship Act, what are these names? They don't describe, this is all marketing,
Well,
you know,
Well, yeah, I mean,
propaganda.
I mean, you know, when we first started preparing for this presentation, like Dignity Act, that's a new one. I haven't heard that name before. But I said, when I heard about the Citizenship Act, I said that sounds really familiar. And then I go back, oh yeah, because that's the same thing from 2021. There's one out there called the Eagle Act, which is a very popular one we've talked about here before. I'm pretty sure it literally has a Wikipedia page or something like that, or it's a web page about the bill. And it's literally been around for like 6 or 7 years, trying to get some version.
And it's
of
the
that.
same stuff.
It's the same stuff. So, big takeaways for me is I do fundamentally believe that there is, you know, broad bipartisan support to take care of, you know, take care of all these things. Really, I don't think the Republicans are really in love with the, you know, concept of path to citizenship for the undocumented. I think that fundamentally, you know, Democrats are less interested in, you know, border control, cracking down on asylum, refugees, etc. But I think everybody sort of acknowledges that's where the great compromise has to be. And unfortunately, again, the stuff that, like the immigration backlogs for legal employment-based green cards, I think there's very few people that are fundamentally against that, but it's every time it gets wrapped up in these issues, and it becomes a question of, well, who's going to get the win for this one? And
So you need the right political environment.
yeah,
And the right political environment almost always a second-term president.
I would
Almost
yeah.
always, because that second-term president has
Nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And then you also need a Congress that has enough in it that to get the votes across.
Yeah.
And with that, the environment are not here today.
Yeah. This is, you know, we are not political commentators, but basically it requires some sort of a slight swing, because basically the division in the House and the division in the Senate are so close. The Democrats had control at the first half of Biden's, or at the beginning of Biden's presidency.
Well, we were so close.
So close.
Yeah, we were so close, except for Manchin, he killed it. And now he's trying to run as an independent. I mean, it is what it is. I can't change yesterday, but it was very disheartening. Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is, you know, it seems like in order to get something like this passed, there has to be some sort of bipartisanship. Doesn't seem to be happening. You know, there's been 10 different versions of this bill, and no great compromise yet. And I wonder about another version where, fine, one party gets complete control of the executive branch, and, you know, the House. Not enough, apparently. Not
enough of it.
Not enough. And
one person short.
One person short. And I wonder if do we think it's possible that you get that, you know, there's some sort of demographic shift that gives the Democrats, for example, control.
Honestly, even then, I don't think it can be done. You really need to have a president, because what you need to do is you need to cut out the fringes. So if the Democrats have a majority and no Republicans are on board, the fringes of the Democratic Party is going to drive so much garbage in it and so much ridiculous stuff in it that the rest becomes nauseated at passing it, and nobody wants to pass it.
No matter who, if it's your Manchin or somebody else, there will be somebody on the edge who will say, this is my opportunity. If I'm the most extreme guy on whatever side, if I'm the most conservative or the least conservative, this is my chance to cleave off my piece and make my stand and either get in the headlines or get what I want. And it causes the whole thing to sink.
Just like and I like the name of it, the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2023, which is basically raising the debt ceiling. The extreme on the left were upset, the extremes on the right were upset, and the people in the center from both sides said, enough of this garbage, we got a country to run, and we need to make a decision. And the hell with you on the left, the hell with you on the right. we are going to get in the center and pass this bill, and it was both Democrats and Republicans.
As soon as I hear about the concept of the center getting together, even the most centrist person there, the person who's, let's say, just 1 degree left of center, and the other person who's 1 degree right of center, I imagine in their head seeing the headline, other side gets great big political win. And it all falls apart.
Well,
I guess I'm more likely to believe in the demographic swing that gets gets one party in control.
We need a crisis, like for example, we need something like Y2K. Y2K, again, anything with a hard deadline.
Yeah.
Y2K had a hard deadline. People freaked out when 1999 is going to roll onto 2000. They raised the H-1B, and I don't remember the exact number. I believe
it's like
200,000 H-1Bs, 228,000 H-1Bs from 80,000. Even back in the days it was 60,000.
I think it was like 100, maybe like 185,000. Maybe.
And then they rolled it down.
Oh, yeah, it was over the course of a couple years that the law still out there, still in the law. Yeah.
Congress tripled the numbers of the H-1Bs in a minute because there was a hard deadline and there's the unknown after that.
Yeah.
So we need the conditions where there is a hard deadline or something pretty freaking scary. Yeah. That's the only thing. It's just like the country is going to default. Everybody got together. Republicans and Democrats got together. We need an AI crisis, like maybe ChatGPT takes over the world.
ChatGPT
takes over the
gets
world.
a fork and a knife and starts eating people.
Eating people, and then we're going to say, well, we need more people to fix this problem. Get those guys green cards, and they'll do it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So,
but that's what we got.
Well, I want to wrap things up. So, I imagine the people out there have the same like Google alerts that we have. I have one for adjustment of status, H4, visa bulletin, and sooner or later somebody's going to get another news alert about Senator what's their face introduces the super cool Immigration Act, and then the news cycle does what it does with that. How do you suggest people process these things? I have my answer to this. Which
give me your answer.
My answer is I get an email probably once. It used to be a little bit more frequent, but probably still about once a month. Saying, hey, what's the deal? I heard about this law. What's the deal? Is that going to impact me? My answer is usually wait until you hear about the president signing it, because the bottom line is, Congress does a lot of, homework assignments, write tons of laws that will never that'll go in the garbage can at the end of the session. Nobody will ever think about them again. They're sometimes out there for self-promotional purposes. Sometimes they're out there, these things I do believe are genuinely part of a broader, very vague negotiation process to figure out where people agree on things. So there's some value on them, but don't count on an introduction of a bill. Count upon it getting signed by the president when that's when it's time for fireworks and confetti.
And going to be in 2023.
I don't.
So any act that has something of 2023, go to the next page. Yeah. Dignity Act of 2023, throw it in the trash. The whatever act of 2023.
Yeah. I would love to be proven wrong on either of these, because the bottom line, both of these sound pretty palatable for me in terms of immigration reform, especially for people in our audience. But it just doesn't seem
possible.
Yeah, I put when I see these people, we're talking about it now because people have asked us a lot lately. But when I read these things, I say I read the news alert, go, that'd be cool. And I wait until it's going to be signed by the president, because that's what really matters. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Brian, for doing some of the research for us on this, and we're going to come back in a minute to answer your questions. All right, so this is the time when we answer your questions, and we like to take a little bit different approach than other people in answering questions. We take it on a kind of a back and forth between Brian and myself. Sometimes Brian and I will have different answers. Sometimes I overlook something, Brian corrects me, and sometimes Brian overlooks things, which is very rare. I correct him. But just remember, guys, we don't know enough about your case for you to take what we tell you and make a decision on your future. You always need to hire an attorney or consult with an attorney of your choice when you decide that this is the time I need to make a decision on my case. Also, there's not an attorney-client relationship established because we're virtually online here talking to you, but we want to kind of give you ideas and thoughts to help you make some decisions. All questions are open, love to answer them. We don't have answers to all those questions, but we will do our best. Let's take the first one.
Yeah. So we have some early questions here, really about immigration bills. And I think we've kind of answered this one. Immigration bills get introduced, and there's no action beyond this. Do you see any registry type reform happening in 2023? And
I don't see a registry. There hasn't. My God, when was the last registry? 1964? I don't know. Remember.
No, I think it's the Reagan administration. I think maybe in like 1986. I think
86.
Yeah.
It has to be before 86, but yeah, a long time ago. I don't see it.
Yeah.
No, nobody's even suggesting it.
Yeah. So another sort of.
But you're right. Now I remember. It was Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Republican president, which gave lots of people undocumented folks a path to
from California.
Yeah.
A Republican president that was a very strong president.
It's the still the Republicans' favorite president. Ask somebody though, he'll tell you he's the best one. Massive immigration reform that helped a lot of people that he.
Yeah. He broke the Soviet Union, according to people. He gets the credit for it, at least.
Yeah. Well,
tear down that wall. He said, "Tear down that wall."
The problem there's the problem though that credit issue. Everybody wants the good thing to happen on their watch.
Exactly, and then he gets the credit. History writes it that way, and that's the problem.
Yeah, he said, "Tear down that wall," and they said, "Sure, we'll do it."
Yeah. All right. So Amarjeet has a follow-up.
Yeah, so can Biden take DACA-style executive action this year to provide work permits to people legal or undocumented living in the U.S. for a number of years?
Yes, the president, and that's my answer, Brian, you can have your answer. The president can make an executive decision on a lot of things. And he can just say, I believe I have the power, and then he writes a decision, and he publishes it, and then administrative agencies will follow suit and execute the decision he makes. However, there is another branch of the government that keeping an eye on the president's power limitation called the U.S. Supreme Court. And the U.S. Supreme Court, which is now are controlled by conservative judges, they're the majority, probably will have an issue with the president doing something like this. Now, it may take a year or so, or they can take it on an emergency basis.
Yeah.
If somebody files a lawsuit, somebody can appeal to the Supreme Court on an emergency basis, and they can put a stop to him. So I don't think it's realistic that he will have broad powers to change things on a fundamental basis, in my opinion, like what Obama did.
Well,
DACA got challenged many years later.
Yeah. So, one thing I'm thinking, one thing that we've always talked about potential executive action on is changing the way they define the counting of the people of individuals for employment-based visas.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people think that they have the power. They have the administrative power to do that.
Yeah,
but nobody get what it takes.
It's such a second-term thing to do because.
But that would be something that somebody with any intelligence can do, and just fix that problem once and for good.
On a second term. It sounds like a second term sort of thing for a president to do, because I imagine him doing it right now, and then I imagine the political commercials
especially after the election is over, as he's leaving office, he can. But it's maybe he doesn't have time to do that, because it does take time.
He's the president of the United States, the most powerful person on the planet.
But it's not going to be by an executive decision. Something like this, I would imagine that it would not be by an executive decision. It's going to have to be by rulemaking, regulations and rulemaking by USCIS publishing.
That's fundamentally executive decision making. It's delegated executive decision making.
But it's a process.
Yeah.
It takes 60 days to publish it and then write it, and it's not going to be like a surprise.
You're right. But and here's the thing. What my experience has been really bad at regulating over my experience as an immigration attorney. U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Immigration regulations are, despite the need for them in all sorts of areas, are very few and far between. That's for sure.
Which they need to roll so much of it. I mean, they cover so much stuff. Yeah. You would imagine agency with such massive level of responsibility, you think they're popping a regulation at least 3 times a year.
Yeah, well, we're immigration attorneys. People come and ask us questions. And one thing I find myself saying more than I like is, that's one of those great immigration areas where the answer is not really clear because the government hasn't, stepped down from the mountaintop and given us an answer. So are we give you opinions and what ifs? But yeah.
Well, Amarjeet is having us given.
Yeah,
us
we're gonna keep these questions going. Yeah. So this is more of a commentary. But everybody else has been reforming their immigration programs. Why is there no action in the USA?
Well, we just talked about it.
Yeah, that's really what our presentation turned into. And are essential workers a thing of the past? Will they ever get a green card, or even nurses are stuck in a green card backlogs where there's a dire need for them? Is the U.S. shooting itself in the foot?
Yes,
I mean,
they are.
You're preaching to the choir here.
Okay, so we'll probably make somebody else's questions. Thanks, Amarjeet, for
I think we covered it. We covered the rest of Amarjeet's questions here during our initial conversation.
Yes.
So let's check out what Bhagya has to say.
On the other hand, these frauds are hiring immigrant lawyers to tackle their cases. So let's fill in the gap here. Because obviously,
I'm not. Maybe there was a first half of that. Sometimes our parts of these questions
are hiring immigration lawyers to tackle their case. Well, everybody's. I don't know what you're talking about, but everybody's entitled to an attorney in this country. This is America, my friend. Immigration lawyers need to represent people. Everybody is presumed innocent until proven guilty. How about if you're accused of a terrible crime and you're an innocent person? Don't you like to have a lawyer to represent you?
Yeah.
So I don't see why.
I mean, I'm going to presume this commentary relates to the alleged H-1B visa fraud. I mean, there's so much that is undefined and up in the air as to whether. I mean, the government says, we believe this is fraud, and they can use their enforcement powers to go after people. And suddenly, when it ends up in a court, the government surefire position is attackable. The government can say yes, this is fraud, but as soon as there's a criminal case or a civil case about it, that's where a court can come in and say, "Oh, government, your rules are wrong. You've overreached." And
there's a lot of bad guys out there.
Sure.
I mean, let's simplify this. There's a lot of bad guys out there. Now, are bad guys entitled to legal representation in this country? Yes, that's the Constitution. That's the American Constitution. Yeah. That's we are as a country. You know why? Because they're among the group of bad guys, there are innocent people. Yeah. I was just reading today. I was reading something completely unrelated. In Australia, a woman was found guilty of killing her 4 children 20 years ago. She went to jail for 20 years. They found out they made the wrong decision and they freed her 20 years later. So you got this woman, not only did she lose
20 years of
4 of her children were murdered.
Yeah, and then I'm talking about years. Yeah,
and then she went to jail for 20 years for crimes she never committed.
Yeah.
Now, don't you think? I mean, obviously, unfortunately, whoever attorney represented her couldn't help her back then. But don't you think these people are entitled to representation? Now, technology has moved, and forensic analysis has improved such that her innocence was concluded. And she was released.
Yeah, I mean, that's why in criminal law the standard is beyond a reasonable doubt. Yeah. And even still, sometimes, I mean, we don't do criminal law around here. We know the standard though. Yeah. But the idea that somebody could get, it's I don't know whose quote it is, but I'd rather see 100 guilty men go free rather than having one not guilty one being incarcerated.
Right.
And I can't say I love it, but it's what I have to sort of subscribe to.
Yeah. So that's our answer.
That's our attorney soapboxing, I guess. Yeah.
On the partial question. So Sky Limit has a question.
Yes.
Assuming, since I had traveled after filing, it would be denied. I'm assuming advance parole.
Yeah.
Anyway, Sam suggested last time that it's always better to respond regardless of the outcome. Looks like I got an RFE.
Yeah.
I did respond to the RFE requesting travel history,
Oh, sorry, part 2.
Travel history and at least I-94, etc. They approved my case in a week and I received my parole. Whoa!
So interesting. And I can't really, if you fully admit to them in the record that you traveled and they still approve your advanced parole, that's a good advanced parole. I heard anecdotally recently from somebody that, hey, I got an advanced parole approved and I traveled during the pendency and they approved my advance parole.
They have discretion. They have discretion.
There has been pressure from within the agency, like the ombudsman as well as elsewhere, to basically turn over that silly advance parole denial policy. And maybe maybe they're finally doing it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, because it is a ridiculous policy that they sicked upon people. You know, that's one that was a surprise. Just no notice whatsoever. They just said, you get denied now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, wonderful. Congratulations, Sky Limit. That we're happy for you.
Yeah.
And for Suresh.
Yeah. Hi, Sam and Brian. My priority date is May 2015, EB2 India. My son is on H4 status and will reach 21 in 2025 February. He just finished his first year in college. When should I start his student visa process? So this, I think, this is why I'm inclined to bring up. You know, this is the sort of thing you really have to talk to somebody about, because odds are you're going to be using an attorney to file that. You know, change from H4 to
Well,
F1
he reached
anyway.
in 2025,
Yeah.
so we are in 2023.
Yeah.
So I think you're good for a little bit of time.
Yeah, I mean, the beef I have is that it takes a long time to get approved for status.
But I don't think the school will not allow him to continue school when an F visa is filed, change of
I
status.
don't know. He's not going to have. This is the sort of thing I want to think about. But
So what I think what you need to do.
the policy on that actually has flip-flopped back and forth, and I think at this point they will allow somebody to attend, because it used to be for a while that they would expect you to maintain your status right up until 30 days before you start.
It's not complicated.
Yeah.
It's very simple. You contact the school and you ask them exactly that question that you have given us. You take that question exactly how you wrote it. You go into the international office. Every college has an international student office, and ask for an appointment, or your son can ask for an appointment, and lay it out exactly how it is. My H4 expiring 2025. I want to switch to an F1 visa. I want to start not too early, not too late, but in a way where I'm comfortable. If my student visa remained pending past February 2025, would I be able to continue school, or would you guys have me stop? You ask them that question.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, oh no, here's our policy, here's what
Yeah.
we know.
School DSOs are really the power holder in terms of, you know, what you're going to. Yeah.
So DSO, designated school officials, is a person within every college and university. They are very smart people, and they are highly trained on these very specific issues, and they are the people that you should be asking.
Keep on going here. But yeah. When are these two bills you mentioned and discussing going to be brought up in the Congress/Senate? What's the timeline for them to become law if they pass?
Well, I think the second part of the last part of the question is more important than the first part. If they pass,
Yeah.
should they pass?
Yeah.
Will they pass?
Yeah, I mean, how long did it take for the what was the debt limit bill
The Fiscal Responsibility
yeah.
Act of 2023.
Yeah.
It took 1 week.
Yeah. I mean, but after it was passed. I mean, same.
President signed it on Saturday.
Yeah, same day they passed it, right?
Here's what I remember. I don't have the dates. On Wednesday, the House passed it.
Yeah.
Okay. By Saturday, the Senate passed it, and the President signed it. So, how fast can Congress act? In days.
Yeah.
But the problem is, it has to pass, and we don't think it'll pass. Yeah. And normally laws don't take that quick, because there's a reconciliation process. There's a lengthy process. This is like worse
Yeah,
than.
they got to talk, and they got to debate, and everybody has to attach their
And
their
they pass
amendments
separate
to-
bills, and then they reconcile the bills. They have a committee that meets from the House and the Senate, and then they come out with a new one.
Yeah.
That's kind of in the middle between each House's bill, and then they vote on the second one, and they pass the same bill in both houses, and then take it to the president, who on his own good old time will sign it. So normally it takes a long time, a month, maybe 2 months after passage for something like this to finish. Now, will it pass this year? We don't think so.
Yeah. From Venkat. So, attended 485 on EB2 I-140 interview on 5/8/2023 in USCIS field office in Washington, D.C., and the online status is still showing interview scheduled. Is it a worrying thing? Should I contact USCIS via InfoPass? So, my sage wisdom on USCIS online tracking is it's about like, 95+% accurate, and that number drops as soon as a case hits a local field office. So that doesn't worry me. However, I'd say to Venkat, it worries you. It doesn't really hurt. Just contact USCIS and ask them, and it'll give you the peace of mind, and that's worth something.
Yeah. I wouldn't worry about it. I'll give him the short answer, but that's a good answer, Brian. But is there InfoPass available in DC?
Yes. So info. I want to get on my stump about InfoPass. InfoPass used to be a thing. You could go to the USCIS website and schedule an appointment to an InfoPass appointment and come in and talk to a USCIS officer. And if you've ever been to a USCIS field office, they have all sorts of windows there. Someone would be sitting at a window and they would answer your questions. You cannot really just schedule an InfoPass appointment anymore. Maybe if you're lucky, if you say the right magic words to somebody on the phone at USCIS, you can get them to, to talk to you, invite you to a field office, talk to you about something. Pretty rare anymore, but you can definitely call USCIS, and they might be able to tell you what the actual status of a case is. But I mean, I've explored like one time several years ago. I explored this issue, and why doesn't the website reflect what is accurate? And I think I was literally referred to the USCIS webmaster, which is not somebody who's going to
help you out.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Brian. Interview went well.
Yeah.
With basic employer verification question, as I have been with my employer right from the beginning.
Yes.
I think he's given us some
just some more
follow-up
details
question,
about,
and with his priority date being 2014.
Yeah. I guess I'll reiterate again. That message saying interview is scheduled means nothing to me. It doesn't surprise me at all. I agree with you. Yeah.
Does recapture bill from Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy has a chance to pass? It is the recapture bill is a wonderful bill that it's was trying to not only does recapture but also improve and fix the aging out problem.
I remember the name. I don't remember the contents of the bill.
It's like any other bill. It's like any other immigration bill. It's a political year. I don't think. I mean, it's a very sensible one. It's not one that is.
It's not wide open like It's not
It's not as comprehensive. It's humanitarian. It's
But where the things are politically now, people only get excited about big, comprehensive things anymore. The big stuff is.
Yeah.
It seems in order to get anything done, it requires a great compromise. It just seems to be why these things get matched up with the Dreamers and the border and all that stuff.
Yes. And we got a commentary here. It says, as long as Durbin and Mendez from Democrats and Grassley from Republican side don't retire, I don't see any immigration reform. They seem to be partnering in crime, installing immigration reform. True. I honestly agree with you. I mean, we need.
Yeah.
One of the things.
Durbin and Grassley are names that have come up in this venue before in terms of people who.
And Mendez also is not exactly. Mendez is not exactly very helpful because I think he's not going to pass anything employment based unless there's a piece with it for the undocumented, and it is frustrating. You're right, 100%. A general question about visa allotment. Does USCIS allocate a certain set of visas per month or quarter, or do they spill over from rest of the world to India or China in a category? Isn't it in the last quarter? So, number one, it is not USCIS that does that. It's the State Department that does that. However, USCIS has great control over the visa bulletin because they supply the lion's share of data that goes into
at least for employment-based stuff.
Well, I mean, the consulate, they don't do the consulate, but they do.
USCIS, they handle adjustment of statuses, and lots of people apply for green cards in the United States. They control visa usage.
However, the spillover happens at the end of the fiscal year, at the beginning of the year, and in the first quarter. Because the spillover cannot happen on day one because the numbers are not there 100%.
Yeah.
So it could happen in the second quarter. So, but the pass-through and the application of these numbers happen quarterly. They must do it quarterly. Yeah. They cannot do it in one time per year. Otherwise, they cannot manage it. It cannot be applied because by the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah, but it's an interesting thing though. At the end of the fiscal year, the last quarter of the fiscal year, there has to be some sort of shenanigans happening there because oh shoot, we have a bunch of visas we didn't use, and I guess they have to be very careful on the movement of the visa bulletins at the end of the fiscal year because they can't just say we'll use these in the next quarter because there's no quarters left in the year and visas get burnt up. So.
And that's why they burn visas every year because they are not as keen as you expect them to be.
Yeah.
But yes, they try not to, but more often than not.
I guess it's worth noting then that we expect the July visa bulletin coming soon is the beginning of a new quarter, and I think you're more likely to see interesting visa bulletins in the last couple months.
Well, it has been all depressing, right?
Yeah.
And
I'm looking forward to October.
And also the people with the know-how on visa allocations are baffled about what's happening.
Yeah.
They're baffled about what's happening. But Praveen has a question. I have an H-1B visa stamp from a company A and is valid until 2024 in February. I moved to company B recently. Can I travel to India and come back on the same visa stamp? That's a good question, and the answer, it's a classic question, and the answer is yes. The State Department and the consulate does not want to see you again, and you can use the stamp for another company, even though it has the prior company's name on the stamp. They should just remove the company's name.
Yeah,
that's stupid.
Yeah, why? Why would they do that in the first place? It only serves to confuse. I think. Yeah.
We have not heard anything about fraud investigation from USCIS. Thousands like me who applied only once through a legitimate employer are left with no option but to leave the country. Right on, my friend, right on. It's a stupid system that we have. Everybody's talking about a second lottery, potentially.
They have, fundamentally though, that... Yeah, let's talk. I'm sorry, continue on.
Everybody's talking about second lottery. No, if they do criminal investigation, this is going to take a long time. I think most of it is going to be done in petitions, reviews. So these petitions, as they get reviewed, they are going to be rejecting people. They're not going to do. Except for the egregious one, what we talked about. The egregious one, they will go after them, but they're going to manage this through the RFE process.
Well, here's what I'm thinking though. The bottom line is, we know where the deadline is. It's 6:30. If cases aren't filed by 6:30, those are numbers that aren't going to go used, right? And if people are dissuaded from, let's say, John Q. Fraudulent Company has gotten himself, 1,000 selections. He's very pleased with himself, and then that press release came out, and that person's going, "Oh God, I can't file any of these." If that company chooses to not, or that group of companies more likely chooses to not file for 1,000 H-1B visas, that could, in theory, push it, more towards, a second select. However, go ahead, Sam. I'm sorry.
No. Keep going.
They do take more cases than they have visas available because they expect, some cases.
But they didn't this year. It's like 112,000 selections.
But for 85,000 visas, that's 17,000, whatever the actual correct number is, difference, and you start chipping.
But it's lower than the prior years,
which
is weird. I don't know why. I think you remember also that number has to do not only with accepting more people than 85,000. It's the number of visas that were rejected or withdrawn the prior year get added to the subsequent year.
That's true.
So that number is not an extras, freebies.
I think you should explain that for the
you do it.
Okay, he who asked the question gets. So one thing Buggy. So it stinks that there are people out there that who didn't get H-1B visas who arguably should have, and it seems like that there are visas that. People have been selected who aren't going to file those cases. Those visas don't go up in smoke. They do become available for the next fiscal year. The way the law works is that if they can be used in this fiscal year, it's still possible, second round of selection. But those that aren't used in this fiscal year, they roll over to the next fiscal year, thereby increasing the pool of visas available.
Right. But the problem we have is. Here's a gentleman who is running out of EAD time in May.
Yeah.
or June 15.
Yep.
That guy is leaving the country and losing his job.
Yeah.
Then he gets selected again. He has to wait 4 months to make it back to the U.S.
It's all just beautifully intertwined. I mean, because as an immigration attorney, I think, okay, maybe that's somebody you can start a green card process for, get them to the green card stage. But then I ask the question, well, where are they born? They were born in India. That's the per country limitations getting you. And what are the processing times for an employment-based green card right now? I'm telling people, you're looking at a year and a half to 2 years to get, yourself to an I-140 approval. Yep. It's a mess.
Yep. HF, my adjustment status is pending. If my employer is notified of multiple filing, will it impact my pending adjustment of status? Well, it will not impact your pending adjustment of status directly. It may impact your pending adjustment status indirectly. What do you think, Brian?
I think I would agree with that.
Yeah. So there's no relationship between the H-1Bs and the adjustment. However, there is a credibility problem now. If the employer is found to have violated the law, then there is a credibility problem with this employer vis-a-vis everything he's done in immigration.
Yeah.
And everything is fair game to open up and look at again. And that's not something I like if I'm having an adjustment status with a company.
Yeah, I just imagine that people, pure speculation, but people, if your adjustment of status is from a company that has, multiple, some sort of fraud allegation against them, that I would, if I were a gambling man, I'd say more chances of an interview and more chances of interesting questions during that interview.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. So that's where I would be concerned.
Yeah.
And again, if in fact that employer is badly involved, I doubt that the company will survive by the time all said and done. It depends on the size of the company. But that company could go under.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be massive criminal investigation and I'm sure blacklisting from the H-1B program and many other issues that will come up that may render this company not able to survive.
Yeah.
And therefore your adjustment status may not continue unless you're able to use the 180 days and move to a different employer.
Yeah, I say, and this is general information. I don't know if they filed multiple H1s.
It's all hypothetical.
Well, yeah, I mean, but this is a problem. One of the persons earlier was asking, well, when are we going to hear about this? It's kind of chilling. It's kind of like these laws. Somebody puts out a press release and says, big immigration reform coming. And then, people get excited and you don't hear anything about it. This is kind of, in the same family. It's, big immigration badness coming.
No action. And everybody's saying, okay,
everybody's, they're anti-excited. They're scared off their butts, and they don't know what to make of it.
And people are leaving and hoping for a second lottery. It may not happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor communication.
It's not poor communication. It's incompetence. Yeah. Poor communication is you're being nice. Incompetence.
I'm very nice.
Yes, you are very nice. Incompetence, I am very realistic. This is totally incompetence because they have to come out and roll out solutions. It's an agency. They have to say, we got a problem here. The system is screwed up. We estimate, because there's 400,000 duplication. It doesn't mean there's 400,000 cases of fraud. Missing information. Other people are saying, there's 400,000 cases of fraud. There isn't 400,000 cases of fraud. There is duplication and there's fraud. By the way, there's fraud all the time. This is not the first year there's fraud. This is not the first application that there's fraud. And this is not the first time USCIS says it's fraud when it's not fraud.
Yeah.
So
that's what I want to underline. Just because they say it's fraud doesn't mean it's going to bear out that way. Because I think we've had this conversation here. Let's talk maybe a couple weeks ago when we talked about fraud. There's so much in their policies that are untested. They just wrote on a website somewhere saying, here's what's fraud. I don't know if it's.
But there's a vacuum of action and vacuum of information that is the silence is deafening.
Well,
the silence is torturing people. You have to come out and say, we estimate 100,000 fraud. We estimate 75,000 fraud. Here's our interim solution. Here's the timeline.
That's what bugs me. No interim solutions. And now the attestation on the H-1B CAT registration. They said, just in case you guys aren't aware, here's what we consider fraud. this, companies collaborating with individuals, collaborating with third parties. They know they have a problem. Why not
fix it and tell people? I mean, inform people.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So, are you seeing USCIS issues NOID for culprits involved in multiple H-1B registrations for employers that your firm represent? Is there any hope of all of you a second H-1B lottery? So, I don't usually talk about our firm. Happy to talk about our firm, but that's not the intention here. The intention is really to share information. But we, as my firm, we will not touch a case or an employer where we believe the employer plays games, and we will not tolerate that. But there are also a group of people who are not well informed. We work very hard with them to make sure that they understand the law clearly, and we spend a lot of time with our employers to make sure that none of those issues happen. I am not aware of a single double filing out of my office. We're very proud to say that, right? We have not had, but now we've had NOIDs coming from other filings outside our office, seeking our help and assistance to represent them and help them. And we do help these people, and we do represent these people on both sides. We're lawyers.
Yeah, well, I mean, that goes back to the first. I mean, I have had plenty of consultations with people who are saying, I've had, hey, I work for some company. I had multiple filings myself because I had multiple companies willing to file for me, or I believe my company engaged in. And those people still deserve, from the most sympathetic to the least sympathetic, I think. They deserve to have, the law figured out as to what actually is. Because, I mean, the bottom line for me, and I'm going to be the third time I'm saying it, is what exactly is fraud in this context? I think that is very much up in the air and still be determined in a court.
It's the most abused word by USCIS, the word fraud.
Everything's fraud.
Yeah, if your mother's name misspelled on an application, you committed fraud. I mean, I'm exaggerating. That's not true. But they could. I mean, it is so abused by them.
They can twist just, the slightest, oops, I forgot into, well, now you're trying to conceal.
Yeah.
And that's the way. I understand. There's immigration fraud out there, and I understand that they are programmed to combat it, but. It catches good people, and that's the problem.
And by the way, it's 7 o'clock. We're going to stay a little longer, answer questions, but we're taking a little longer.
We're fired up, yeah.
Yeah, we're taking a little longer to answer questions for people because really we're dealing with very important questions. So if you have a question in there that you put in, we're going to do our best to go a little bit longer and answer your question. And such as this one right here from Bargov. Can I have both H-1B and H-4 visa stamp on my passport? Can you? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. You can have 4 different H-1 visa stamps. You can have a B visa, you can have an H-1B, you can have H-4, and potentially you can have an F-1 there. Now, the consulate normally will not allow that to happen. The consulate normally would like to have 1 on your passport. So if you walk in with a B visa and you apply for an F-1, they approve it, you're going to have your wonderful F-1 visa, but you may have cancel without prejudice on your other one.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with it. They just want to make sure that the visa that is applicable that you're applying for that pertains to the current moment in which you are coming to them is the only one valid. So yeah, you can have it. Consulates usually don't allow it.
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, you come to the consulate and say, here's why I'm going to the United States. They're going to want to funnel you in to make sure that you are in fact going to the U.S. for that purpose.
Yes. Venkata Shekhar, Brian.
Yeah. So I recently found out that my employer has multiple filed my application in 2022. After knowing it, I now have requested to withdraw my H-1B filing. Can I now apply to H-4 transfer? Will it be approved? I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, and this is where I'd say, this is a sort of a general information session, and sounds like the exact reason why we advise people to, talk with a competent immigration attorney.
However, we're going to give him some direction.
I gotta get that.
Well, number one, I want to connect. I'm very sorry about this for Venkata. It's horrible what they've done to you. It's horrible what they've done to you, and because they basically damaged your career. And this is what's wrong with the H-1B system. There's not enough protection for foreign professionals. It lacks that piece, and it's a big piece, it's a big problem. Now, back to the answering the question. I kind of took it from you. Sorry, Brian.
Sam, I'll take it from you if you give me a half second. So.
Yeah, no problem. So, my advice, you withdraw it. I would definitely, number one, I would definitely recommend that you seek an attorney to help you through this, because it just, you being on your own is scary. I mean, you can do it. It's nice to have an attorney of your choice. I mean, we're not asking you to hire us. That's not my intention. Go hire an attorney you like, somebody that you're comfortable with. Because it does give you some guidance. I would if I had a client that came to me with that problem, I would put together a certified letter and send it to USCIS explaining the situation.
Yeah.
I would make sure it's certified mail, return receipt requested, and
you can, in
but
theory.
I want to have an attorney look at it. I don't want people to write things without an attorney look at it, because these are serious stuff.
Yeah, there's long story short, there's whistleblower protections available, but if you want to avail yourself of those, you got to understand the risks associated with that. I guess I would say, even though I'm sure this person is bringing this up for a serious reason, just because the multiple companies file multiple H-1Bs for capitalizations for somebody doesn't necessarily require fraud. If multiple companies have different distinct offers of employment for you, that's something that where it could be entirely legitimate. I talked.
But this case is an employer filed multiple cases.
It sounds like somebody honestly believes that they're fraud. I can never. I'm an attorney. I can never concede fraud, especially in this very strange.
He's giving you the facts.
Yeah, I guess. All right.
So yes, so yes, you can apply for an H-4 right now, and hope for better luck next time around.
Yeah, can you apply for? There's some things that come with that. Again, while you talk to an attorney about this, if you withdraw your H-1B, if the employer withdraws the H-1B, you're putting yourself into a 60-day grace period. And in theory, if USCIS, you can apply for H-4 generally speaking during a 60-day grace period, but it begs the question, if USCIS becomes aware of a fraud that then they believe you're involved, it's an immigration cloud that can follow you around. Is the bottom line.
As long as you document it very well.
Well, this is true. If you can document that you're not involved, that's what really helps you.
Absolutely. All right. Well, my H-4 visa stamp canceled if I get for H-1B visa stamping. Well, we don't know 100%, but
it's a distinct possibility.
The normal trend is that. Yes. The normal trend is that, unless you make a case for them why you would like it left alone. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe they'll leave it alone. It's really at the discretion.
It is. They're going to have your passport, and they're going to do what they're going to do with it when you're not around.
But you can make the case, polite case, that I'm just if there's flexibility, officer, I would sincerely appreciate leaving my H-1B alone, because I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job and be able to have the flexibility to travel and join, because my wife is on H-1B.
Yeah, I'm going to save you some
my
time.
Husband's on H-1B.
You don't want to see me again. Yeah. There's a reasonable chance I might want to come on H-4 without coming through your office again.
If you ask politely, you may get it. Nothing guaranteed. Karthik with the 3 or 4 Ks.
4 Ks, it looks like. I'm on EB-1A visa, priority date 2015. Got approved a couple months ago. Can I change jobs despite my AOS pending? EB-1A visa priority date of 2015. It sounds like somebody should have an approved green card.
Well, EB-1A is self-petition, isn't it? So what's the big deal about changing jobs?
Yeah, you're right. That's the cream of the crop. If your EB-1A is approved, it's not that. Well, it depends upon how the case is written.
100%.
Context for people. EB-1A, it's the number one category of EB-1 green cards. It's based upon, you don't have to have an offer of permanent employment from the United States to anybody. You can just say, I'm a fantastic person. I know there's work available for me in industry X. And that's that. But if your case was, say, founded upon, I'm going to continue my work with, company Y, who is like the premier company in industry X, I'd say maybe you have something more to think about that there.
Yeah, self-petition, you can change employment unless the petition is written so company-centric. such that it's difficult for you to really justify leaving and maintaining your EB1
Yeah, I guess.
argument.
I mean, fundamentally, I mean, you shouldn't seem like you shouldn't have to if you're still working in the same industry, but it depends upon how your
it's written.
case is. Yeah.
I think we've given him enough.
Yeah.
I haven't received any noir or noid on my H-1B visa. Would it impact my H-4 visa transfer? I wasn't aware that my employer did multiple filing. It might. You might get an H-4. Like I said, you need to have an attorney with you. You might get an RFE. The bottom line is you were not involved, you were not aware, and probably you need good legal representation. And I believe that if you're not involved, you should get it approved. If they have an RFE, it needs to be
In
addressed.
terms of your expectations of risk, I mean, the announcement from USCIS and all the sort of, background talk articles around it indicate that they're going after companies that are the most likely ones to be going after are those who are the most egregious violators.
But there has been incidents that they've gone after, and then the USC also consulates are refusing.
That's the big issue. So people who have potentially involved in this have to be careful about travel.
And therefore, you want to clearly document things.
Yeah.
Clearly document. But if there's an RFE and you're not involved, it should be addressed, and it should be addressed successfully.
Yeah.
That's really the bottom line. All right. So, Barty, what is the backlog status of EB1C? What is utilization and balance in this category? Is there wastage expected this fiscal year?
Well, I'll spend a moment here and go to the visa bulletin. I will admit that let's think about this. It's really kind of hard to project visa wastage in a particular category, especially an employment-based one, because most of those green cards come from the United States.
Keep scrolling.
And USCIS does not give us great data about green card usage from inside the United States until well after the fact. For EB1, everybody remains current except for China and India, and China and India are both stuck in February 2022.
Which is 3 months. No, a year and 3 months.
A year and 3 months as their final action date. Yeah. I'm inclined to believe that it's a classic immigration attorney answer to the visa bulletin. Look to October to see what the better answers are. If I would say.
I mean, is there going to be any wastage? There's no indication of being overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, this year there's no more visas. I mean, there's a little bit more visas that came across from last year, but nothing overwhelmingly unusual. And there's no announcement of not being able to handle the workload. But stranger things happen with this agency.
Yeah, from anything we understood about the last visa, which is they were attributable to massive amounts of visa availability, where they just couldn't get to the cases in time.
Yeah, is worth starting my perm I-140 process now while F1 visa? I'm from India and I'm still on my first year of OPT. What are my options if I don't get picked in the next two H-1B lottery attempts? So. Is it worth it? If you're not picked in the lottery, it's not worth filing labor certification.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the fundamental problem with labor certification going for a green card while on F1 status. They're incompatible. Your F1 student visa is not a permanent immigration seeking visa, and that is exactly what labor certification I-140 is. And
good point. If you are from a place like Canada, or England or Australia or countries that are not backlogged, there is an opportunity to switch from an F1 to having a green card and bypass the H-1B.
Yeah.
Because the green card comes reasonably quickly.
Relatively,
reasonably quickly.
Yeah.
And then with the perm being slowed down a little bit, that's also becoming a little bit challenging, to be honest with you. With a backlog as big as the Empire State, for China and India, I don't see an advantage of starting a permanent I-140 early necessarily, and I don't see a big disadvantage, but I don't see an advantage.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally for me, what I worry is that you need to claim some sort of F1 related benefit in the future. I don't know, like reinstatement. I don't know, and you're incompatible with that because you have and maybe an approved I-140 might be enough for them.
Well, with the perm taking a year and a half to get approved, and if your OPT time has a year and a half left in it, there's no harm. in my opinion, short of a reinstatement problem or being out of status problem.
You're right. My scenario is pretty extreme, and I mean, even if you wanted to go back to school, you don't require a new F1 filing to do that.
So it's that kind of a question. It's kind of a knowing exactly your personal situation, and knowing your expectation, and you're wanting to go back home. Do you not want to go back home?
Yeah, but I mean, think of it though. It's always good to have an earlier priority date. Get your perm filed. Get your priority date.
But if he has an ailing parent, God forbid, and he believes that there is a high likelihood to travel to India in the next year or so, that may not be a good idea.
Well,
so
it doesn't hurt to have be to be in India and have a priority date.
Well, have a perm pending. Perm does not mean immigrant intent.
Yeah.
So you can have a perm. A perm does not conflict with F1.
Yeah.
And a perm takes a year and a half to get approved. A I-140 filing does conflict with F1. So you have a year and a half to play with, plus 6 months, because the perm, once certified, is valid for 6 months. So you have about 2 years not feeling any pressure on your F1 visa. Beyond that,
well,
yes.
I mean, if you run out of time on your F1 visa, right? And the worst, so if you finally get selected for an H1B, great. That perm I-140 won't interact with that. And if you never don't get selected and have to leave the country, well, you can keep on applying for if you find a sponsored employer while you're in India who's willing to sponsor you, presuming you're from India. Well, you can still register, get selected in the H-1B cap, 4 years down the road, and great, you'll have a priority date that's 4 years old rather than getting one started,
Yep.
Yeah.
Patel, if EB3 India retrogresses in the next visa bulletin, when can we expect it to move forward again?
I am going to be, I don't know. Does the end of the current visa bulletin mention another EB3 retrogression? Because I believe it does. Those haven't always come through immediately. The bottom line for me is, October visa bulletin is the next one with big new visa availability, and that's what I'd look forward to.
All right, so Vishal has a question. I'm going to get to it here in a second.
Okay.
He said, well, there's an also here, so
Yeah,
hopefully,
I got it.
thank you. Go ahead.
I'll read it. You're going to answer it. You seem really into it. We have applied for marriage-based green card application, and all the paperwork except medical is done. I've completed my paperwork in May. When should I expect the result? Spouse, U.S. citizen, living in the U.S. Also, when should I expect EAD card and travel document? Finish all paperwork in last week, April, early May.
What do you think?
So usually if I'm talking to somebody about a family-based immigration like this, I usually tell somebody 10 to 14 months is when you might see a green card approval. Probably erring on the 14 side of that.
I agree.
At this point. Look up processing times at your local USCIS field office, because odds are it's going to be transferred there for an interview because it's a marriage-based immigration application. EAD and AP. Now, I usually tell people there's a reasonable chance that you may not see that EAD and AP approved before your actual green card is. So I guess the answer is you may never see that EAD and AP, Vishal, due to the long processing times associated with those.
Wonderful. So I think that concludes the day. I have a couple questions. One is talking about projection of the, we'll just address them very quickly here. One is says, when would these two bills help my situation if I approved I-140 with no H-1B visa? Well, potentially, it all depends. The devil is in the details. I mean, there's not enough details to answer that question, quite frankly, at this point. But any immigration-friendly bill normally helps.
Remove the backlog. I mean, what that individual has is a backlog problem. Remove the backlog, and suddenly having a perm and or an approved I-140 is an instant path to filing a green card and thereby staying in the United States.
So here, EB4 special juvenile immigrant, I have I-360 approved and I-45 been sent for fingerprint done. Is retrogression effective to me? So you are in the I-360 category, which is employment-based fourth preference.
Yeah.
And in the employment, we're just looking that up here.
Sorry, this is the employment. That's the dates for filing. So it's employment-based
fourth preference. So. Right now, I don't know what country you're from, but it looks like it's September 2018. So if the I-360 priority date is 2018, so We need to know more about your case.
The bottom. I'm going to maybe simplify it a bit. The bottom line is, all EB4.
2018.
Yeah, EB special juvenile immigration.
I-360.
Fourth preference. Okay, I-364. Okay. All EB4 categories are backlogged till September 2018.
So I need to know what's your priority date. We don't know that.
Yeah, that's true. If I don't know your prior, yeah, that's true.
Last but not least, when do you think EB2, rest of the world, visa bulletin will move forward? My priority date is March 2023. Thank you so much. Well, Rajesh, assuming you are not born in India and not born in China, or your chargeability, meaning that perhaps your spouse is not born in these two countries, then you will follow rest of the world category. And right now, EB2 rest of the world is February 2022.
A year and some change off of current.
And the first big movement for that is going to be October. But let's look at next month visa bulletin because until, nobody can predict that. So let's look at next month. Let's look at October. Hopefully it should get you close to March 2023. With that, thank you guys for listening to us. We went a little bit over today to get everybody's question.
We were off last week. We had extra immigration energy.
And we had to unload the immigration energy. Otherwise it will be painful for us. Thank you so much. Next week, 6 o'clock Eastern Time, we'll pick it up with another topic of interest and answer your questions. You guys have